he turned me on to the zappers. He used to interview Hulda Clark and help drive their books. And see, the innovation here is that you've got 2 copper electrodes. And what they do is they're able to send that positive and that current across. The old idea was that you had to put it like a strap over here and a strap over there, and have 2 electrodes going around. You had to walk around with this whole gadget on you, and you couldn't move around, and it was wires. You had to hold copper pipes. Remember those? Yeah. And it was this whole disaster because nobody can really do that in their everyday life. And what he really discovered is actually you don't need any of that. You don't need to be running it across your body. If you have something going on in your upper body, keep it somewhere in your upper body. If you have something going on in your lower body, keep it in your lower body. And that's all you really need. How did you stumble into that? That was always of interest to me.
Good question. I started, after about a year of making them just like Hulda Clark did, I realized it was too cumbersome, and I realized these electrodes can probably be closer together, so I started putting in my sock, everything in my sock, and people have tried it, and they got well just as quick. So I experimented. I put some on the box, like this, and I found a dozen people around Seattle who had sinus infections. And every single one of them who tried it got their sinuses cleared up in 20 minutes from wearing a zapper on their ankle. So I knew that it didn't really matter where you put the thing on your body. I gotta say, the body is full of electrolytes: cerebrospinal fluid, blood, mucosa, lymphatic fluid, everything, urine, feces. It all conducts electricity. So you can kill the parasites in your brain by zapping on the sole of your foot in 20 minutes. And the first time I zapped an hour, and it killed all the parasites in my brain, which is probably what caused my depression. And I've seen a lot of people throw away their brain drugs after they start zapping.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. I want to turn this over because I've been using zappers for years. There's probably a few of you here who's been doing that too, or you're brand new. Is there any questions that anybody has about these zapper devices? Let's go here and then we'll come back to Mr. Quinn over here.
I'd like to give these as gifts. I just bought one. I think it's wonderful after one night. I want to know if we should be concerned about any precautions, such as if they have sports injuries with plates or nails in their knees or their neck or something like that.
That's a great question. Thanks a lot. It's absolutely impossible to do any harm to anybody with any battery-powered zapper, no matter who makes it. Absolutely impossible. You can use it on pregnant women, guys with pacemakers, newborn infants. It's all good. It never hurts anybody.
Your dog or cat?
Your dog or cat? Yeah, we worked on 2 dogs here this weekend. Your cat will probably go lie down on it if he's not feeling good. And it'll zap a cat through the fur. A dog has to be zapped on the skin. A horse can apparently be zapped through the fur. Some animals. It depends on the nature of the fur.
Okay. Just Tom.
Yeah.
Could you say a little about voltages and technology, proof that it works, and what does it do to these viruses? I mean, I'm trying to get
Sure.
What's it do?
Very good. Now, this is all hard science. There's no guesswork with this. It's a very simple process. I have a picture on my website, worldwithoutparasites.com, and our website, and it shows some dead worms. These worms came out of the colon of my ex-wife, who used a zapper for the first time during a colonic. She killed a whole bunch of worms. She kept a few and took a picture. She'd never used a zapper before, and she'd been on the best parasite remedies for about 6 months without any effect. So when she started crapping out these worms, she kept them. And I told her, I'm going to make you famous with this photo, but I won't take you fishing anymore. But I forgot her last name. I don't know what it is now. So.
What about the ionization factor? Like, just what's because the voltage is the amplitude, right? The voltage is the amplitude. You're dealing with a square wave form, and then the frequency is the pulses per second. So maybe we can talk about that and how that affects a virus or a bacteria.
That's what this fella asked in the first place. So. What Hulda Clark used to tell about, but she doesn't anymore, is that a zapper works because the square wave pulses electric current onto the skin, and the skin acts as a capacitor. That means it keeps a little bit of the current, and then it bleeds some of the current through. It's been measured that by the time the current gets into your body through the skin, it's 5 millionths of an amp. 5 millionths of an amp. By the time it gets on the skin, it's 5,000ths of an amp through this circuit. And it's 5 volts by the time the battery gets through there. So that's very little current. You have to put it against your lips to feel it unless you're energy sensitive when the battery's turned on. And so that little tiny bit of current ionizes the entire inside of the body, all the body's fluids. And when you ionize an environment, you make it impossible for pathogenic organisms to live within that environment, and they fall apart. And that's what the picture of the worms demonstrates better than anything I can say. And I'm glad my wife's here, because the same thing happens in the atmosphere when you ionize the atmosphere. The smog disappears, and that's why there's hardly any smog in Los Angeles. That's why that smoke from the fires is staying compact and blowing downwind instead of spreading out like it used to. And that's because there's thousands and thousands of little organoid devices around Los Angeles. And it happened 5 years ago, mostly one guy, Don Bradley. And Andy Schwarm, who's filming this, had been selling cloudbusters to people since 7 years ago. There's a whole bunch of those around here too. This is all Wilhelm Reich's technology. It's based on his technology. And my wife is psychic energy sensitive, and she made it possible for us to do this together. So maybe she'd explain how the orgonite works. Is that okay?
Yeah. I don't see him from the time he gets up until he comes back at dinner time, when his stomach starts to rumble.
That's American ingenuity, isn't it? So maybe you could tell us, how did you get into zappers, Don? What was the first thing?
1995, I was sickened by a chemtrail in San Bernardino, experimental chemtrail. And I knew what it was because I listened to Ardell. Can you hear? Oh. So I didn't know if I'd be affected. Next day I started coughing, and I stayed sick until April when I got my first zapper. I bought a zapper for $125. It was like Hulda Clark's zapper. And I got well in a day from the coughing and the lack of energy. But my depression went away, and I felt like a huge balloon lifting up, and first time in my life. So I couldn't wait to find more sick people to try it on. And after about 60 desperately ill people got well in a very short time, I knew that the claims had some value, so I started making them and selling them. And that's how I started. And I started improving it.
I want to talk about the innovations on your zapper. Let's have a look at that. Just because I've been into zappers for years, but I even remember back in the old days, the publisher for Hulda Clark's books, one of the guys who was in that publishing business, his daughter has actually been working with me for over 10 years. And his name is Christopher Hartman. Do you know Christopher Hartman by any chance? He goes by Christo Hart now. He's been a raw foodist. I met him a dozen years ago. He's been a raw foodist ever since. The guy's amazing. Anyway, he turned me on to the zappers. He used to interview Hulda Clark and help to drive their books. And see, the innovation here is that you've got 2 copper electrodes. And what they do is they're able to send that positive and that current across. The old idea was that you had to put it like a strap over here and a strap over there, and have 2 electrodes going around. You had to walk around with this whole gadget on you, and you couldn't move around, and it was wires. You had to hold copper pipes. Remember those? Yeah. And it was this whole disaster because nobody can really do that in their everyday life. And what he really discovered is actually you don't need any of that. You don't need to be running it across your body. If you have something going on in your upper body, keep it somewhere in your upper body. If you have something going on in your lower body, keep it in your lower body. And that's all you really need. How did you stumble into that? That was always of interest to me.